The stagecoach door swung open, and Tabitha Thornton stepped down onto the dusty main street of Silverton, Colorado, her worn boots hitting the packed earth with a soft thud that seemed to echo the hollow feeling in her stomach. She had not eaten a proper meal in 3 days, having spent her last coins on the stage fare from Denver, gambling everything on the hope that Isaac Yates, the rancher who had answered her advertisement for marriage, would be the decent man his letters suggested. The September afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as she clutched her single carpetbag, scanning the busy street for someone who might be looking for her. Miners and cowboys passed by without a glance, their boots kicking up small clouds of dust that made her already parched throat tighten. The altitude here was different than back in Boston, thinner somehow, and combined with her hunger it made her head swim in a way that frightened her. She had written to Isaac 3 months ago, responding to his notice in the matrimonial paper. At 22, she had exhausted her options in the East after her father's death swallowed everything following his death. Her mother had passed when she was young, leaving no family to turn to, no inheritance to claim. The choice had been simple yet terrifying. Find work in one of the factories for wages that would not keep a cat alive, or take a chance on a new life in the territories. Isaac's letters had been thoughtful, honest about the hard work ranch life required, but painting a picture of a good life that could be built together. He had sent money for her passage and told her to arrive on the 15th of September. Today was the 15th. She had followed his instructions to the letter. Tabitha walked slowly down the wooden sidewalk, peering at the hand-drawn map Isaac had included in his last letter. His ranch was 3 miles outside of town, north along the creek road. 3 miles might as well have been 30 in her current state, but she started walking anyway, her pride refusing to let her ask for help from strangers. The bag grew heavier with each step, though it contained precious little. 2 dresses besides the one she wore, undergarments, her mother's Bible, and a daguerreotype of her parents on their wedding day. The buildings of Silverton gave way to scattered houses, then open country dotted with pine and aspen trees that climbed the surrounding mountains. The beauty of it all would have taken her breath away if she had any breath to spare. Her vision started to blur at the edges, and she stopped to rest against a fence post, willing herself to continue. She had come too far to fail now, had risked everything on this chance. When she finally saw the ranch house in the distance, a sturdy log structure with a wide porch and smoke curling from the chimney, relief flooded through her so powerfully that tears sprang to her eyes. She forced her legs to move faster, though they felt like they belonged to someone else entirely. The yard was well kept, with a barn and several outbuildings that spoke of a prosperous operation. Chickens scratched in a pen, and she could hear cattle lowing somewhere beyond the house. Tabitha climbed the 3 steps to the porch, each one requiring more effort than it should. She raised her hand to knock on the solid wooden door, but the world tilted suddenly. The last thing she saw was the door opening, a tall figure silhouetted against the warm light from inside, and then darkness swallowed everything. Isaac Yates had been watching the road all afternoon, anticipation making him restless in a way that was unfamiliar. At 30 years old, he had built his ranch from nothing, working harder than most men thought possible. The land had been his focus, his purpose, filling the lonely spaces that others filled with family. His own parents had passed years ago, his father from consumption and his mother from a broken heart not long after, when his nearest neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Henderson, had suggested he find a wife through the matrimonial papers. He had resisted at first. It seemed too transactional, too cold. But the loneliness had grown until it felt like a physical thing, and he found himself composing a notice that he rewrote a dozen times before finally submitting it. Tabitha's response had stood out immediately. Her handwriting was educated but not flowery, her words honest about her circumstances without being desperate. She asked questions about the ranch, about the territory, about what he hoped to build. Her letters revealed a quick mind and a gentle humor that made him smile. He found himself rushing to town, each week to check for her responses, reading them multiple times until he had memorized every word. He had described himself honestly in return. A tall man, he supposed some would call handsome, though he did not spend much time considering such things, with dark hair that needed cutting more often than he managed and blue eyes that his mother had always said were his best feature. He told Tabitha about the ranch, the hard winters and beautiful summers, the satisfaction of building something lasting. He told her he was looking for a partner, not just a housekeeper, someone to share the challenges and rewards of this life. Now, seeing a figure approaching in the distance, his heart began to pound in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. He stepped out onto the porch to wait, wanting to give her a proper welcome. As she drew closer, he could see she was smaller than he had imagined, with dark hair pinned up under a bonnet that had seen better days. Her dress was shabby but clean, mended carefully in places. She moved slowly, and something about the way she climbed his steps sent alarm shooting through him. Isaac opened the door just as she reached the top, and in the split second before she collapsed, he saw her face clearly. She was beautiful in a delicate way that seemed at odds with the determination in her eyes, but those eyes were glazed with exhaustion. He lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the porch, her slight weight barely a burden in his arms. "Madam, Miss Thornton," he tried to rouse her, but she was completely unconscious, her face pale except for two bright spots of color high on her cheekbones. Her skin felt clammy against his hands. He did not hesitate, carrying her inside and laying her carefully on the sofa near the fireplace. His mind raced through possibilities. Illness, injury. Then he noticed details he had missed in the first panic. The way her dress hung loose, the hollow look to her cheeks, the almost translucent quality of her skin. She was starving. Anger and guilt warred within him. He should have sent more money, should have made arrangements to meet her in town. Instead, he had assumed she would arrive well and whole, had been so focused on his own nervous anticipation that he had not considered what her journey might have cost her. Isaac moved quickly, years of caring for sick cattle and horses giving him a practical knowledge that served him now. He knew that someone in her state could not simply be fed a large meal. He warmed some beef broth he had made the day before, diluting it with water, and carefully spooned small amounts into her mouth, relieved when her body responded with automatic swallowing even though she remained unconscious. While the broth heated, he had dampened a cloth with cool water and wiped her face and hands, noting the calluses that spoke of hard work and the threadbare quality of her gloves. Her carpetbag sat by the door where she had dropped it, and its small size told him everything he needed to know about the life she was leaving behind. After getting some liquid into her, he sat back and simply watched her breathe, steady, and even now that she was horizontal. In the better light of his home, he could see that she was lovely, with fine features and thick lashes that lay against her pale cheeks. But more than her appearance, he found himself moved by her courage. She had traveled hundreds of miles to meet a stranger, had walked 3 miles in her condition rather than give up, and had made it to his door through sheer force of will. "I have got you now," he said quietly, though she could not hear him. "I am going to take care of you, and I swear you will never be hungry again." Tabitha stirred an hour later, her eyes fluttering open to find herself in an unfamiliar room lit by lamplight and the glow of a fire. For a moment, panic seized her, then memory returned in fragments. The ranch. The door opening. Falling. "Easy now," a deep voice said, and she turned her head to see a man rising from a chair pulled close to the sofa where she lay. He was tall, as his letters had promised, with broad shoulders and capable hands. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and striking blue eyes that looked at her with concern. "You are safe. I am Isaac Yates. You made it to my home, but you fainted on the porch." Mortification flooded through her, and she tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. "I am so sorry. I did not mean to. I was fine. I just—" Her voice cracked, and she realized how desperately thirsty she was. "Here." He held a cup of water to her lips, supporting her head gently while she drank. The cool liquid was the most wonderful thing she had ever tasted. "When did you last eat a proper meal?" The kindness in his voice, the genuine worry in his eyes, broke something inside her that pride had been holding together. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "3 days ago. I spent everything on the fare. I did not want to arrive as a burden, but I suppose that is exactly what I am now." Isaac set the cup aside and pulled the chair closer, sitting so that his eyes were level with hers. "You are not a burden. You are the woman brave enough to travel across the country to build a life with a stranger. That takes more courage than I think I have. But I am angry with myself for not sending more money, for not meeting you in town, for not considering that the journey might be difficult." "You sent more than enough," Tabitha protested. "I used some of it for other expenses before I left. That was my choice, my responsibility." "What kind of expenses?" His voice was gentle, no judgment in it, only curiosity. She looked away, embarrassed. "My landlady had not been paid for 2 months. It did not seem right to leave with that debt unpaid when you had given me the means to settle it. And there were a few other small debts of my father's that I knew about. I thought I could manage the journey on less." Something in Isaac's chest twisted. She had used money meant for her comfort and safety to pay debts that likely no one would have pursued, acting from integrity even when it cost her dearly. "That was honorable of you," he said quietly. "But you could have written to me. I would have sent more. There was not time. And I had already asked so much." She finally met his eyes again, and he saw defiance there beneath the weakness. "I need you to understand something, Mr. Yates. I may have come here with nothing, and I may have quite literally collapsed on your doorstep, but I am a hard worker. I will earn my place here. I will not be a burden you come to resent." "Isaac," he corrected gently. "And if we are going to be married, you should know that I never do anything I do not want to do, and I never resent honest effort. Right now, your job is to recover your strength. Tomorrow, and all the days after, we will figure out the rest together." Tabitha searched his face, looking for signs of insincerity or hidden cruelty, but found only steadiness and warmth. The man was exactly what his letters had promised, and relief made her dizzy all over again. "Together," she repeated. "That sounds wonderful." Isaac smiled then, a slow, warm expression that transformed his serious face into something that made her heart skip. "I am going to get you some more broth. You need to sip it slowly. I know you are hungry, but we have to be careful. Tomorrow you can have something more substantial." He stood and moved to the kitchen area, and Tabitha took the opportunity to look around. The house was simple but well built, everything clean and in good repair. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall with a bearskin rug spread before it. The furniture was handmade but quality, showing care in its construction. There were books on a shelf which pleased her enormously, and curtains on the windows that, while plain, had been hung with attention to detail. It was a house that needed a woman's touch, certainly, but it was not the rough bachelor's cabin she had half feared. It was a real home, or could be with some care. Isaac returned with a steaming mug, and this time he helped her sit up slowly before handing it to her. The broth was rich and warming, and she had to force herself to sip it as instructed rather than gulping it down. He sat again, watching to make sure she did not drink too fast. "Tell me about your journey," he said. "Not the hard parts if you do not want to, but what you saw, what you thought of the country." So she told him about the train ride through landscapes that seemed to go on forever, about the other passengers and their stories, about her first glimpse of the mountains, and how they made her feel small and insignificant in a way that was somehow comforting rather than frightening. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly hearing her, not just being polite. When the mug was empty, exhaustion pulled at her again, and Isaac noticed immediately. "You need rest. The bedroom is yours. I will sleep out here." "I cannot take your bed," she protested. "You can and you will. We are not married yet, so propriety demands separate sleeping arrangements anyway. Once you are stronger, we can talk about when you want to have the ceremony. There is no rush from my end. I want you to be certain." He stood and held out his hand to help her up. "Can you walk?" "I think so." She took his hand, noting the calluses that matched her own, the strength in his grip that was carefully controlled so as not to hurt her. He steadied her when she swayed, his other hand going to her waist in a gesture that was respectful but protective. He guided her to the bedroom, a comfortable space with a large bed covered in quilts, a wardrobe, and a washstand with a pitcher and basin. "There is water for washing, though it is cold. I can heat some if you prefer. Cold is fine." She was barely able to keep her eyes open. "Sleep as long as you need. I will be right outside if you need anything. Anything at all, you just call out." He hesitated at the doorway, and she saw concern still creasing his brow. "I am glad you made it here, Tabitha. I know this was not the welcome either of us imagined, but I am truly glad you are here." "So am I," she whispered, and meant it with her whole heart. Tabitha woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of something delicious cooking. For a moment, she could not place where she was. Then memory returned in a rush that brought both embarrassment and a strange contentment. She sat up slowly, relieved to find that the room had stopped spinning and her head felt clearer than it had in days. Someone had brought in her carpet bag, she noticed, setting it on a chair by the wardrobe. The consideration of that simple gesture touched her. She used the cold water to wash her face and hands, then changed into her better dress, a dark blue cotton that she had mended so carefully the repairs barely showed. She pinned up her hair as best she could without a proper mirror, tucking the wayward dark strands into a bun at the nape of her neck. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Isaac at the stove, cooking what appeared to be eggs and some kind of grain. He turned at the sound of the door and his face lit up with relief. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Much better, thank you, and deeply embarrassed about yesterday." She moved into the main room, noting that he had folded blankets neatly on the sofa where he must have slept. "Nothing to be embarrassed about. Sit down. I am making oatmeal and eggs. Plain food, but it should sit well after yesterday." He pulled out a chair at the rough-hewn table that stood near the kitchen area. Tabitha sat, watching him move around the space with easy familiarity. He had clearly been up for some time, as the fire was well established, and the coffee in the pot on the stove smelled like it had been brewing a while. "Do you always cook for yourself?" "I do. I am not going to claim to be an expert, but I have not starved yet." He glanced over his shoulder with a slight smile. "I am looking forward to sharing the duties, though, and if your cooking is better than mine, I will happily turn the whole operation over to you. It seems fair to warn you that my skills are limited." My father and I lived simply, and there was not much money for elaborate meals even when there was money at all. She paused, then added honestly, "But I am willing to learn, and I do make excellent bread when I have the ingredients. Then we will learn together." He brought 2 plates to the table, each with a modest serving of oatmeal and a single egg. "I know you are hungrier than this will satisfy, but we need to build back up slowly. There will be more at lunch and a proper dinner tonight." The food was simple but well prepared, and Tabitha ate slowly, savoring each bite. Isaac sat across from her with his own plate, and she was grateful that he did not try to fill the silence with unnecessary chatter. There was something peaceful about sharing a meal this way, comfortable in a manner that seemed impossible given they had only just met in person. "I should tell you about the ranch," Isaac said after they had both finished eating. "So you know what life here actually entails. I do not want you to have false expectations. Please, I would like to know everything." She folded her hands in her lap, giving him her full attention. "I have 200 acres, about half of it in the valley here where we can graze cattle and grow hay, the rest up in the foothills. I run about 100 head of cattle, mostly Hereford, and I sell beef to the mines in Silverton and Durango. There are also chickens, as you probably heard, and 2 horses. It is enough to make a decent living, but it requires constant work, especially in summer and during calving season." He leaned back in his chair, his blue eyes serious. "I cannot afford to hire help except during roundup and when we drive cattle to market. That means there is always something that needs doing: fences to mend, animals to tend, hay to cut and stack, wood to split, 100 other tasks. I wake before dawn and often work past dark. In winter it is somewhat easier, but the cold brings its own challenges." "I am not afraid of hard work," Tabitha said firmly, "and I am stronger than I looked yesterday, I promise you that. I believe you. But I want to be clear that life here is not easy. Silverton is a mining town, rough around the edges, though there are good people too. We are 3 miles from town, which is close enough to reach when needed but far enough that we are on our own most of the time. The winters are harsh, with snow that can leave us snowed in for days or even weeks at a time." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "I also want to be honest about what I am hoping for in a marriage. I want a partner, someone to share this life with in truth, not just in name. I want conversation and companionship, someone to sit with by the fire at the end of a long day. I want, eventually, a family, children to leave this ranch to build something for." His gaze met hers directly. "But I also understand that trust takes time, and that what we have agreed to through letters needs to be confirmed in person. If you decide that this life is not what you want, or that I am not what you want, I will give you money to return east or to start over somewhere else. I will not hold you to promises made to a stranger." Tabitha's throat tightened with emotion. The sheer decency of this man, offering her an escape even though it would cost him pride and hope, made her more certain than ever that she had made the right choice. "I will not lie and say I am not nervous. Everything here is new and unfamiliar, and you are right that we are still strangers in many ways. But I meant what I said in my letters. I came here to build a new life, to be a true partner to someone. I want the same things you do: a home, a family, someone to share both burdens and joys with." She took a breath, gathering her courage. "I would like to move forward with the marriage if you are still willing. But I would appreciate a little time to recover my strength and to learn my way around the ranch and your routines. Is a week too long to ask? A week is sensible and reasonable." Relief crossed his features. "That will give us time to know each other better, and for you to be certain. The circuit preacher comes through town once a month, and he is due in 4 days. If you are ready by then, we could be married next Sunday. If not, we wait another month." "Next Sunday," Tabitha said decisively. "That gives me 4 days to prepare and to convince you that you are not making a terrible mistake." Isaac laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made something flutter in her chest. "I already know I am not making a mistake, but I appreciate the sentiment. Now, if you are feeling up to it, let me show you around the property. If not, that can wait." "I am feeling much better, truly. I would love to see everything." They spent the morning walking the ranch, Isaac pointing out the barn where the horses lived, the chicken coop with its collection of busy hens, the smokehouse and root cellar, and the various outbuildings that held tools and supplies. He introduced her to his horses, a sturdy bay gelding named Rusty and a sweet-tempered mare named Belle. "Belle is gentle enough for you to ride once you are comfortable," Isaac said, stroking the mare's nose. "The distances out here make a horse necessary. I can teach you if you do not already know how. I learned as a child, though it has been years. My father kept a horse when I was young before his circumstances changed." She reached out tentatively to pet Belle, pleased when the mare nickered softly and nuzzled her hand. "She is beautiful." "She is yours, then. I will adjust the stirrups and we can get you a proper riding skirt when we go into town." He showed her how he measured out the feed, where he kept the tack, explaining his routines and systems with patience. The cattle were grazing in a far pasture, sturdy red and white animals that lifted their heads to watch as they walked the fence line. Isaac pointed out where the creek ran through the property, providing water year-round, and showed her his hay fields, already harvested for the season with neat stacks waiting to be moved to the barn. "Next year, I want to expand the herd by another 20 head, maybe more if the market stays strong. More cattle means more work but also more profit. Eventually, I would like to build a bigger barn, maybe add another room to the house." He glanced at her, his expression turning slightly self-conscious. "Assuming you agree with these plans, this is your ranch too now or will be. Your opinions matter." "I appreciate that," Tabitha said warmly, "though I confess I know very little about ranching." "I will have many questions, I am sure. Questions are good. It means you are thinking, considering. I prefer that to blind agreement any day." They had reached a spot where a cluster of aspen trees provided shade, their leaves already beginning to turn gold with the advancing season. Isaac gestured to a fallen log that formed a natural bench. "Can we sit for a moment? There is something else I want to discuss." They sat, and Tabitha noticed that he maintained a respectful distance, not crowding her. "What is it?" "I want to talk about expectations for the marriage itself. The personal aspects." His face colored slightly, but he pressed on. "You are a lady, and I am aware that certain topics are not usually discussed openly, but it seems to me that going into a marriage with misunderstandings or fears left unspoken does no one any favors." Tabitha felt her own cheeks warm but appreciated his directness. "I agree. What do you want to say?" "I want you to know that I will never force anything upon you. The physical side of marriage is something I hope we will share eventually, but it should be something you want too, not just something you endure. I know that women are often told it is merely their duty, but I do not see it that way. It should be mutual or it is not right." He looked directly at her, his blue eyes earnest. "So I am saying that even after we are married, we move at your pace. If you need time, we take time. Your comfort and your trust matter more to me than my own desires. Do you understand?" Tabitha's heart swelled with affection for this careful, considerate man. "I understand, and I cannot tell you how much it means to hear you say that. I will be honest with you as well. I am nervous about that aspect of marriage. My mother died when I was young, and I had no one to talk to about such things. What I know is cobbled together from whispered conversations and one very awkward talk from my landlady before I left. Then we will learn together, Isaac said, echoing his earlier words about cooking. And I promise to be patient. He paused, then added with a slight smile, though I will confess that I find you very pretty, and I am looking forward to the time when you are comfortable with me. The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, made Tabitha smile despite her embarrassment. I find you handsome as well, which I suppose is a good start. They sat in companionable silence for a few moments, watching the cattle graze and listening to the wind rustle through the aspen leaves. Tabitha felt a peace she had not experienced in years, maybe ever. There was something settling about being here, about the solid presence of Isaac beside her and the beauty of the land spreading out in all directions. "Tell me about your family," she said eventually. "You mentioned your parents in one letter but did not go into detail." "My father came out here during the gold rush in the 50s, but he did not have much luck as a miner. He was smarter than that anyway, realized that there was more money in selling beef to miners than in chasing gold himself. He started this ranch with nothing but determination and a small herd he drove out from Missouri. My mother came west as a teacher, met my father, and gave up teaching to help him build this place." His voice grew softer with memory. "She was tougher than she looked, handled a rifle as well as my father, and could rope a steer better than most men. They worked themselves half to death building this ranch, but they loved each other fiercely. When my father got sick with consumption, she nursed him for 2 years before he finally passed. She only lasted 6 months after that. The doctor said it was her heart, but I think it was more that she had no interest in living without him." "I am so sorry," Tabitha said quietly, meaning it. "It was 3 years ago now. Hard years being here alone, but in some ways, I think I needed that time to figure out who I was without them, to make this place truly mine. Now I am ready to share it, to build something new while honoring what they started." He looked at her with an expression that made her breath catch. "I think they would have liked you, my mother especially. She always said that a smart woman was worth 10 strong men, because brains could figure out ways around problems that brute force could not solve." "I hope I can live up to that," Tabitha said. "Tell me more about them, about what they were like." They sat under the aspens for another hour while Isaac shared stories about his parents, painting a picture of 2 people who had loved deeply and worked hard, who had laughed together even through difficulties, and had built something lasting through sheer determination. In turn, Tabitha told him about her own parents, about her father's slow descent from a respected clerk to a man drowning in debt, about how hard she had tried to keep their household together after he became ill. "He was not a bad man," she said, her voice tight with old grief. "Just unlucky and perhaps not as wise with money as he should have been. He made mistakes and I paid for them after he was gone, but he loved me and he taught me to read and to value learning. That matters for something." "That matters for everything," Isaac said firmly. "And the fact that you honored his debts, even when it cost you, shows the kind of person you are. That is worth more than all the money in the world." When they finally walked back to the house, Tabitha felt as if she had known Isaac far longer than a single day. The connection she had sensed through his letters was proving to be even stronger in person, built on shared values and genuine respect. The next 3 days fell into a comfortable rhythm. Isaac went about his work each day, but he made sure to include Tabitha in everything, teaching her his routines and explaining his thinking. She learned how to gather eggs without getting pecked, how to curry the horses properly, and how to check the cattle for signs of illness or injury. Her strength returned quickly with regular meals, and color bloomed back into her cheeks. In the evenings, They would sit by the fire and talk, sharing more stories about their lives and their hopes for the future. Isaac proved to have a dry sense of humor that made her laugh, and she discovered that he loved books as much as she did, though his collection was limited. They made plans to order more from Denver, choosing titles together from a catalog he had. "I never had much time for reading when my parents were alive," he admitted one evening. "There was always too much work, but after they passed, the evenings felt so empty that I started reading to fill the time. Now I love it. There is something about getting lost in a story or learning something new that makes the world feel bigger somehow." "I feel the same way," Tabitha said warmly. "Books were my salvation after my father died. I could not afford many, but the library allowed me to borrow them, and I would lose myself in other worlds to escape my own for a while. Well, you have a library here now, small as it is, and we will add to it together." He smiled at her from his chair across the hearth. "I like the idea of building a collection that we choose together, that maybe someday our children will read." The mention of future children made Tabitha's heart skip, but not with fear, with anticipation. She could picture it suddenly. A little boy with Isaac's blue eyes learning to read by this very fire, or a little girl toddling after them as they did chores. The image felt right in a way that made her certain about the step they were about to take. On Saturday, they rode into Silverton together, Tabitha on Belle and Isaac on Rusty. She wore her best dress, mended though it was, and Isaac had put on a clean shirt and brushed his hat. The town was bustling with miners and ranchers, women shopping and children playing in the street. It was rough around the edges, as Isaac had warned, with several saloons already doing brisk business despite the early hour. But there was also a church with a neat white steeple and shops that looked well kept. Isaac took her first to the general store, a large establishment that seemed to carry everything one could possibly need. The proprietor, a plump man with a friendly face, greeted Isaac with obvious pleasure. "Isaac Yates, been a few weeks since we saw you. What can I do for you today?" "Hello, Mr. Morrison. I need a few things, but first, I would like to introduce you to Miss Tabitha Thornton. She is going to become my wife tomorrow." Mr. Morrison's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but his smile grew even wider. "Well, congratulations are in order. Miss Thornton, welcome to Silverton. I hope you will be very happy here." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I am sure I will be." Tabitha shook his offered hand, relieved by his warm reception. Isaac purchased fabric for 2 new dresses for Tabitha, ignoring her protests that it was too much. He also bought her a warm coat for the coming winter, sturdy boots to replace her worn ones, and a riding skirt as he had promised. For the house, he purchased coffee, sugar, flour, and various other supplies, as well as a few items that Tabitha requested for improving their meals. "I can make a proper stew now," she told him as they loaded the supplies into saddlebags and a pack that Rusty would carry, and biscuits to go with it. "You are going to get tired of my cooking very quickly, I fear, as I only know about 6 recipes. Then we will eat those 6 recipes in rotation, and I will be perfectly happy," Isaac said with a grin. "Besides, I have a cookbook somewhere that my mother used. Between the 2 of us, we will figure out more." Their next stop was at the small office of the circuit preacher, a spare room behind the church. Reverend Thomas was a lean man in his 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He listened as Isaac explained their situation, then asked to speak with Tabitha alone. "It is not that I doubt you, Isaac," the Reverend said apologetically, "but I have made it my practice to ensure that any woman entering a marriage knows she is doing so of her own free will and understanding." "I appreciate that, Reverend," Isaac said without offense. "I will wait outside." Once Isaac had left, Reverend Thomas gestured for Tabitha to sit. "Now then, Miss Thornton, are you entering this marriage willingly? Has Mr. Yates treated you with respect and kindness, completely willingly, and he has been nothing but kind and respectful?" Tabitha assured him. "I know that our situation might seem rushed or unusual, but I have corresponded with Isaac for months. I feel I know his character, and everything I have seen in person confirms what his letters suggested. He is a good man. And you understand that marriage is a permanent commitment, that it involves not just companionship, but also the physical relationship between a husband and wife." Tabitha felt her face warm but met his eyes steadily. "I understand all of that, Reverend. Isaac and I have discussed it. I want this marriage." The Reverend studied her for a long moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied. "Very well. Then I will be happy to perform the ceremony tomorrow after the regular Sunday service. Will you have anyone standing up with you?" "I do not know anyone here except Isaac and Mr. Morrison," Tabitha admitted. "Then I will ask my wife to stand with you, and perhaps Isaac has a friend who can stand with him. We will make it a proper ceremony, even if it is a small one." He smiled warmly. "Welcome to Silverton, Miss Thornton. May God bless your marriage." Isaac was waiting outside, leaning against the church wall with his hat in his hands, and he straightened quickly when she emerged. "Everything all right? Everything is fine. The Reverend will marry us tomorrow after the regular service." She smiled up at him, her decision feeling more solid with each passing moment. "Are you having second thoughts?" "Not even one," he said firmly. Then, more hesitantly, "Are you?" "No, I am ready to be your wife, Isaac Yates." Something flared in his eyes, warm and intense, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her right there on the street. Instead, he offered his arm. "Then let us go home and prepare for tomorrow." The ride back to the ranch was quiet but not uncomfortably so. Tabitha found herself studying Isaac's profile as they rode, the strong line of his jaw and the way the afternoon sun brought out lighter streaks in his dark hair. He was handsome, yes, but more than that, he was steady, solid, the kind of man who kept his word and faced difficulties head-on. She had made the right choice. She knew it with a certainty that went beyond logic. That evening, Tabitha insisted on cooking their dinner, wanting to contribute something concrete before they married. She made a simple beef stew with vegetables and dumplings, and though she fretted over it, Isaac pronounced it the best meal he had eaten in months. "You were worried over nothing," he told her, soaking up the last of the gravy with a piece of bread. "This is delicious. My mother would approve." After dinner, they sat by the fire as had become their custom, but tonight felt different. Tomorrow they would be married, would officially begin their life together, and the weight of that reality seemed to fill the space between them. "Are you nervous?" Isaac asked after a long silence. "A little," Tabitha admitted, "but more excited than nervous. Is that strange?" "No, I feel the same way." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring into the flames. "I keep thinking about how close I came to not placing that advertisement, to just accepting that I would spend my life alone out here. And then you responded, and with every letter, I felt like I was getting to know someone extraordinary. Someone who saw the world the way I did, who valued the same things." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I am not a man who speaks fancy words or makes flowery speeches, but I want you to know that I am grateful you took a chance on me on this life. I will do everything in my power to make sure you never regret it." Tabitha felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I already know I will not regret it, and I am grateful too, Isaac. You saved me in more ways than just catching me when I fainted. You gave me hope when I had none, a future when I could not see one. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift." "You already are worthy," he said softly. Then, even more softly, "May I kiss you? I know we are not married yet, but I would very much like to kiss you." Her heart hammered in her chest, but she nodded, not trusting her voice. Isaac rose and crossed the small space between them, sitting beside her on the sofa. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and cupped her cheek with one calloused hand. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made her eyes flutter closed. When his lips met hers, it was gentle, questioning, nothing forceful or demanding about it. Tabitha's hands came up to rest on his shoulders, and she kissed him back with growing confidence. Heat spread through her, pleasant and thrilling, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing harder. "That was nice," she whispered, then felt foolish for such an inadequate word. Isaac smiled, his thumb still tracing patterns on her cheek. "It was much better than nice. But I should probably say good night now, before I forget myself entirely." He stood reluctantly, and Tabitha stood as well, not quite ready for the evening to end but understanding the wisdom of his words. "Good night, Isaac. I will see you tomorrow." "Tomorrow," he agreed, and the way he said it sounded like a promise. Tabitha prepared for bed in a daze of happiness, changing into her nightgown and brushing out her hair. She could still feel the warmth of Isaac's hand on her cheek, the gentle pressure of his lips against hers. Tomorrow she would become his wife, would belong here officially and completely. The thought filled her with joy rather than fear. She fell asleep easily for the first time in longer than she could remember, feeling safe and content. Sunday morning dawned clear and beautiful, the autumn air crisp but not yet cold. Tabitha woke early and took extra care with her appearance, washing thoroughly and putting on her best dress, the dark blue one that had looked so shabby next to the newer clothes in Boston but seemed appropriate here. She pinned her hair up carefully, leaving a few soft tendrils to frame her face, and pinched her cheeks to bring color to them. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Isaac already dressed in what was clearly his best outfit: black trousers, a white shirt, and a vest that looked new. He had shaved and combed his hair, and he looked so handsome that Tabitha stopped in her tracks. "You are beautiful," he said, his voice slightly rough. "You are quite handsome yourself," she replied, feeling suddenly shy. They rode into town together, both quiet with anticipation. The church was already filling with people when they arrived, miners and ranch families dressed in their Sunday best. Heads turned when Isaac walked in with Tabitha on his arm, and she heard the whispered buzz of speculation. Reverend Thomas greeted them warmly and introduced his wife, a plump, cheerful woman named Dorothy, who immediately took Tabitha under her wing. "It is so lovely to meet you, dear. Isaac is a good man. You are very fortunate, but I think he is fortunate too." A few minutes before the service was set to begin, a young man in his 20s approached Isaac with a grin. "Heard you are getting hitched today. About time, Yates. Congratulations." "Thank you, Caleb. This is Tabitha Thornton, my bride." "Tabitha, this is Caleb Morrison, the son of the general store owner. We have known each other since we were boys. Pleased to meet you, Miss Thornton. Welcome to our little town." Caleb had sandy hair and an easy smile that suggested he found life generally amusing. "Isaac, I would be honored to stand with you if you need someone." "I was hoping you would offer," Isaac said, relief evident in his voice. The regular service was simple but heartfelt, and Tabitha found herself moved by the sense of community, the way everyone seemed genuinely pleased to worship together. After the final hymn, Reverend Thomas asked the congregation to remain for a wedding. A ripple of excitement went through the crowd, and Tabitha felt her nervousness spike. But then Isaac took her hand, his grip warm and steady, and the nervousness settled into calm determination. They stood before the altar, Dorothy on Tabitha's side and Caleb on Isaac's. Reverend Thomas opened his Bible and began to speak about the sanctity of marriage, about partnership and commitment, about building a life together through faith and love. Tabitha barely heard the words, too focused on Isaac's hand holding hers, on the way he looked at her like she was precious beyond measure. "Do you, Isaac James Yates, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do," Isaac said, clear and firm, his eyes never leaving hers. "And do you, Tabitha Marie Thornton, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do," Tabitha said, her voice steady despite the emotion welling in her chest. "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado and Almighty God, I pronounce you husband and wife. Isaac, you may kiss your bride." Isaac stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face just as they had the night before, and kissed her soundly. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers, and Tabitha found herself laughing against Isaac's lips, joy bubbling up inside her. They signed the marriage certificate, Caleb and Dorothy serving as witnesses, and then they were swept up in a tide of congratulations from the townspeople. Women she had never met hugged her and welcomed her to Silverton. Men clapped Isaac on the back and made jokes about married life. Mr. Morrison announced that there would be cake at the general store for anyone who wanted to help celebrate, and half the congregation headed that way. The impromptu celebration was warm and genuine, with cake and coffee served while people shared advice and stories. Tabitha was overwhelmed by the kindness, by how readily these strangers accepted her as one of their own simply because she had married Isaac. "You are well liked here," she told him during a quiet moment, watching him talk with a group of ranchers. "I've been here my whole life and my parents before me. People remember that kind of thing." He slipped an arm around her waist, a gesture that felt natural and right. "But they like you too. I can tell. You fit here, Tabitha." By the time they finally rode home in the late afternoon, Tabitha was exhausted but happy. The sun was lowering toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and the beauty of it matched her mood perfectly. At the ranch, Isaac helped her down from Belle, his hands lingering at her waist. "Welcome home, Mrs. Yates." "Mrs. Yates," she repeated, testing the name. "I like the sound of that." They took care of the horses together, the chores familiar now after days of practice. Inside, they worked side by side to prepare a simple dinner, moving around each other in the small space with increasing comfort. The ring on Tabitha's finger, a simple gold band that Isaac had produced that morning, caught the lamplight as she worked, a constant reminder of the commitment they had made. After dinner, they sat by the fire again, but tonight the air between them hummed with a different kind of tension. Tabitha was acutely aware that they were married now, that the bedroom waiting beyond that door was theirs to share, that the promises made in church encompassed intimacies she only barely understood. Isaac seemed to sense her nervousness because he took her hand gently. "We do not have to do anything tonight except sleep. I meant what I said about going at your pace." "I know you did," Tabitha said softly, "and I appreciate it more than I can say, but I am your wife now, truly your wife. I want us to be together in all the ways that means, even if I am nervous about it. We will take it slow," he promised. "And if at any point you want to stop, we stop. No questions, no pressure. All right," She nodded, then stood, her decision made. Isaac rose as well, and hand in hand they walked to the bedroom. He lit the lamp on the bedside table, adjusting it to a low glow, then turned to her. "I have never done this either," he admitted. "So we are both learning." Somehow, knowing that he was as uncertain as she was made Tabitha less nervous. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the slight rasp of stubble along his jaw. "Then we learned together, like everything else." Isaac kissed her again, deeper than before but still gentle, and Tabitha felt heat curl through her body. His hands moved to the buttons of her dress, fingers fumbling slightly, and she helped him, her own fingers shaking as she worked at the buttons of his vest and shirt. They undressed slowly, shyly, and when they finally came together, it was with a tenderness that took her breath away. There was some pain, as she had been warned there would be, but Isaac was so careful, so attentive to her comfort, that the pain was brief and quickly forgotten. What she remembered instead was the intimacy of it, the way he whispered her name like a prayer, the feeling of being so close to another person that you could not tell where one began and the other ended. Afterward, they lay tangled together beneath the quilts, Tabitha's head on Isaac's chest and his arms wrapped securely around her. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, and felt completely safe in a way she had never experienced before. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rumbling beneath her ear. "I am more than all right, I am happy." She tilted her head to look up at him. "Are you?" "Happier than I have ever been," he said simply, and kissed her forehead. "Sleep now, we have all the time in the world for everything else." Tabitha slept deeply, wrapped in Isaac's warmth, and woke to sunshine streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. She stretched, pleasantly sore, and found one of Isaac's shirts laid out on a chair beside the bed. She pulled it on over her nightgown and padded out to the main room. Isaac was at the stove, cooking breakfast, and he turned with a smile when he heard her. "Good morning, wife." "Good morning, husband." She crossed to him, rising on her toes to kiss him. "You should have woken me. I should be helping with breakfast. I wanted to let you sleep. Besides, I like taking care of you." He gestured to the table. "Sit. Everything is almost ready." Over breakfast, they talked about the day ahead, about the work that needed doing and how they would divide it. It felt domestic and comfortable, a glimpse of what their life together would be like. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that felt right. They worked together during the day, Tabitha learning more about the ranch and finding ways to contribute beyond just housework. She proved to have a knack for the chickens, doubling their egg production through some adjustments to their feed and care. She also started a kitchen garden that she hoped would provide vegetables the following summer. Isaac taught her to ride properly, and they would often ride out together in the evenings to check on the cattle or simply to enjoy the beauty of the land. He was patient with her questions, never making her feel foolish for not knowing something, and Tabitha found herself falling more in love with him every day. The physical side of their marriage deepened as her nervousness faded, and she discovered that Isaac had been right. It was not just a duty, but a source of joy and connection, a way of expressing feelings that words could not quite capture. As October gave way to November, the weather turned colder and the first snows began to fall. Isaac spent long days cutting and hauling firewood, building up their supply for the winter, while Tabitha focused on preserving food and preparing the house for months of cold. One evening in mid-November, as they sat by the fire with Tabitha mending one of Isaac's shirts and Isaac reading aloud from one of their books, a knock sounded at the door. They exchanged surprised glances. Visitors were rare, especially after dark. Isaac answered the door to find Caleb Morrison standing on the porch, looking apologetic. "Sorry to bother you folks so late. My pa asked me to ride out, and let you know that there is a big storm coming in tomorrow, supposed to last several days. He wanted to make sure you had everything you needed before the roads became impassable. That is kind of him, Isaac said. Come in for a moment and warm up before you ride back. Caleb stepped inside, nodding respectfully to Tabitha. Mrs. Yates, how are you settling in? Very well, thank you, Caleb. Would you like some coffee? It is fresh. I would appreciate that, madam. As Tabitha poured coffee, the two men discussed the coming storm and what preparations still needed to be made. After finishing his coffee, Caleb stood to leave. I should get back before it gets any later. You folks stay safe. You too, Isaac said, walking him to the door. And thank Caleb for the warning. After Caleb left, Isaac turned to Tabitha with a serious expression. A big storm this early in the season can be dangerous. We need to make sure everything is secured tomorrow morning. Extra feed in the barn for the animals, all the firewood moved close to the house, and water hauled in case the pump freezes. They spent the next day in a flurry of preparation, working side by side to ready the ranch for the coming storm. By evening, they were exhausted but confident they had done everything possible. The storm rolled in that night with a vengeance, wind howling around the house and snow falling so thickly that they could not see the barn from the window. For 3 days, they were effectively trapped inside, venturing out only to care for the animals and haul more wood. But Tabitha found that she did not mind being snowed in with Isaac. They cooked together, read together, talked for hours about everything and nothing. He taught her to play chess using a set his father had carved, and she taught him a card game her father had loved. At night, they made love and slept wrapped around each other, the storm outside only emphasizing the warmth and safety they had created together inside. On the 4th day, the storm finally broke, leaving the world covered in a pristine blanket of white that sparkled in the sunlight. They dug paths to the barn and chicken coop, checking on the animals and making sure everyone had weathered the storm safely. That evening, as they worked together to make dinner, Tabitha realized that she had not thought about her old life in Boston for days. This was her life now, here with Isaac, and she could not imagine wanting anything else. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, noticing her pensive expression. "I am thinking about how much has changed in just 2 months, how different my life is now." She smiled at him. "How grateful I am for all of it." Isaac set down the pot he was stirring and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "I am grateful too. Every single day I wake up and cannot believe how lucky I am that you took a chance on my advertisement, that you made it here despite everything." "I almost did not," Tabitha confessed. "There were moments on the journey when I was so tired and so scared that I thought about getting off the train, finding work somewhere, anything to avoid arriving here with nothing. But something kept pushing me forward. I am glad it did." He kissed her softly. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Tabitha Yates." "And you are the best thing that has ever happened to me," she whispered back. Winter deepened, and Silverton became a world of white and cold. Tabitha learned to navigate the challenges. The constant need for firewood, the difficulty of keeping water from freezing, the isolation that came with being snowed in for days at a time. But she also learned the pleasures. The stunning beauty of the snow-covered mountains, the cozy warmth of evenings by the fire, the way hardships shared brought her and Isaac even closer together. In late December, they made it into town for Christmas services, joining the community in celebrating the holiday. The church was decorated with pine boughs and candles, and the singing of familiar carols brought tears to Tabitha's eyes. Afterward, several families invited them for Christmas dinner, and they spent a wonderful afternoon with the Morrisons, eating too much and laughing at Caleb's stories. On the ride home, with stars glittering overhead and the horse's breath forming clouds in the cold air, Isaac reached over to take Tabitha's hand. "This has been the best Christmas I can remember." "Mine too," she agreed. "Though I have a confession. I made you something, but I do not know if it is any good." "You made me a gift." He sounded genuinely surprised and pleased. "I did. I have been working on it in secret whenever you were outside." She felt suddenly nervous. "It is not much, but I wanted to give you something." Back at the house, she retrieved a package wrapped in brown paper from her hiding spot in the wardrobe. Isaac opened it carefully to find a shirt she had sewn from fabric she had secretly ordered through Mrs. Morrison. The stitching was careful and even, and she had embroidered his initials on the cuff in thread she had painstakingly unraveled from an old handkerchief. "Tabitha, this is beautiful," Isaac said, running his fingers over the careful stitching. "You made this. I am not expert, but I tried my best. I wanted you to have something from me, something that was not just purchased but made with my own hands." He looked at her with such love that her breath caught. "It is perfect. I will treasure it." He set the shirt aside carefully and reached for something he had hidden behind the sofa. "I have something for you too." He handed her a wooden box, beautifully crafted with her initials carved into the lid. Inside, nestled in soft fabric, was a cameo brooch that looked like an heirloom. "The box I made myself," Isaac explained. "The brooch was my mother's. She left instructions that I should give it to my wife when I married. I know she would want you to have it." Tabitha's eyes filled with tears. "Isaac, I cannot take your mother's jewelry. You are my wife. It belongs to you now." He took the brooch from the box and pinned it carefully to her dress. "There. It looks like it was made for you." They held each other in front of the fire, the gifts exchanged meaning more than any store-bought present ever could. They were symbols of commitment, of the life they were building together, of a future that stretched out before them full of promise. As winter slowly gave way to early spring, Tabitha began to suspect that she might be pregnant. Her monthly courses had not come, and she felt slightly queasy in the mornings. She said nothing at first, wanting to be certain before she raised Isaac's hopes, but as the signs became more definite, she knew she had to tell him. She chose a quiet evening when the work was done and they were sitting together on the sofa. Isaac was reading, his arm around her shoulders, and she was pretending to mend but mostly just watching him. "Isaac," she said softly, "I have something to tell you." He set down his book immediately, hearing something in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine, actually." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "I think we are going to have a baby." For a moment, Isaac just stared at her, processing her words. Then joy spread across his face like sunrise. "Truly, you are certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. All the signs are there." She felt suddenly nervous. "Are you happy about it? I know we have only been married a few months and maybe it is too soon." "Too soon." Isaac laughed and pulled her into his lap, holding her close. "It is perfect. You are perfect. I am so happy I can barely think straight." He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "We are going to have a baby, a child. I am going to be a father." "And I am going to be a mother," Tabitha said, the reality of it settling over her with a mixture of excitement and terror. "I have no idea how to be a mother. And I have no idea how to be a father, but we will figure it out together just like everything else." He kissed her tenderly. "When do you think the baby will come?" "If my calculations are right, sometime in late September or early October." She smiled. "Almost exactly a year after I arrived here." "That seems fitting somehow," Isaac said. "A year ago you stepped off that stage with nothing but courage and hope. Now look at us. Married, building a life, and soon to be parents. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." They sat together for a long time, talking about the future, about names they liked and how they would need to make changes to accommodate a baby. Isaac insisted they would turn the small storage room off the bedroom into a nursery, and he immediately began planning the furniture he would build over the next months. As Tabitha's belly grew and spring bloomed into summer, Isaac became almost comically protective. He would not let her lift anything heavy, fretted over her constantly, and insisted she rest far more than she thought necessary. But his attentiveness also made her feel cherished in a way that brought tears to her eyes. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from gathering eggs. "I know that, but you are carrying my child, our child, and I will not take any chances with either of you." He kissed her forehead. "Humor me, please." How could she argue with that? So she let him fuss, secretly loving his devotion even when it was excessive. In June, Isaac made arrangements with a midwife in Silverton, a capable woman named Mrs. Chen, who had delivered half the babies in the area. She came out to the ranch to examine Tabitha and pronounced her healthy and progressing well. "The baby should come in late September," Mrs. Chen confirmed. "When your time comes, send your husband to fetch me, but understand that if there is a storm or other difficulty, he might not be able to. I will teach him some basics so he can help you if necessary." The idea of Isaac delivering their baby was terrifying, but Tabitha knew it was a real possibility given the distances and unpredictable weather, so they both listened carefully as Mrs. Chen explained what to expect, what supplies to have on hand, and what signs indicated trouble. Summer brought its own work: haying season, branding calves, maintaining fences and buildings. Isaac hired a young man named Thomas to help with the heaviest work, insisting that he could not do it all alone with Tabitha unable to help as much. Thomas was a hard worker and respectful, and Tabitha appreciated having another person around occasionally. As her due date approached, Tabitha found herself growing more nervous. She had heard horror stories about childbirth, about women who did not survive or who lost their babies. Isaac seemed to sense her fear because one evening in early September, he sat her down and took both her hands in his. "I need you to listen to me," he said seriously. "You are strong and healthy, and Mrs. Chen said everything looks good, but I want you to know that if anything goes wrong, if a choice has to be made, you choose yourself. Do you understand? The baby is precious to me, but you are everything. I could not bear to lose you." "Isaac," she started to protest, but he cut her off. "I mean it, Tabitha. Promise me. Whatever happens, you put yourself first." "I promise," she whispered, though she knew in her heart that if it came to such a choice, she would never be able to follow through. But she also understood that he needed to hear her say it. 2 weeks later, on a cool autumn evening that reminded her so much of the day she had arrived, Tabitha's labor began. It started with a dull ache in her back that gradually intensified into unmistakable contractions. Isaac wanted to ride immediately for Mrs. Chen, but Tabitha stopped him. "Not yet. It could be hours, and I do not want you riding in the dark if it is not necessary. Wait until morning if I have not delivered by then." "Are you sure?" He looked torn between respecting her wishes and his own panic. "I am sure. You are here, and that is what matters." She gripped his hand as another contraction rolled through her. "Though I would appreciate it if you would heat some water and get the supplies Mrs. Chen told us to prepare." Isaac moved into action, grateful to have concrete tasks to focus on. He heated water, laid out clean linens, and made sure everything Mrs. Chen had instructed was ready. Between contractions, Tabitha walked around the house, finding that movement helped manage the pain. As the night wore on, the contractions grew stronger and closer together. Isaac supported her through each one, letting her grip his hands until his fingers turned white, murmuring encouragement and love. She had never felt closer to him than in those long hours, when he witnessed her pain and fear but never wavered in his support. Near dawn, when Tabitha could no longer walk and the urge to push became overwhelming, Isaac helped her onto the bed they had prepared. He was terrified but trying not to show it, and his calm demeanor helped her stay focused. "You can do this," he told her firmly. "You are the strongest person I know. Our baby is almost here." The final stage of labor was intense and exhausting, but with Isaac coaching her through it, Tabitha found reserves of strength she did not know she possessed. And then, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, their baby entered the world with a lusty cry that was the most beautiful sound Tabitha had ever heard. "It is a boy," Isaac said, his voice choked with emotion. He quickly cleaned the baby as Mrs. Chen had instructed, then wrapped him in a soft blanket and placed him in Tabitha's arms. "We have a son." Tabitha looked down at the tiny face, red and scrunched and absolutely perfect, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Isaac sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Tabitha and his hand gently touching his son's downy head. Tears streamed down his face unashamedly. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I have never been so proud or so grateful in my entire life." They named him James, after Isaac's father, with the middle name Thomas after Tabitha's father. Little James Yates had a healthy set of lungs and an appetite to match, and he quickly proved to have a temperament that swung between peaceful contentment and demanding insistence with little middle ground. The days after James's birth were exhausting but wonderful. Isaac took on even more of the household work, insisting that Tabitha focus on recovering and caring for the baby. He was a doting father, spending hours just watching James sleep or making silly faces to try to coax out a smile. When James was 2 weeks old, they made their first trip into Silverton to have him baptized. The church was full of well-wishers who wanted to meet the newest member of their community. Mrs. Morrison had organized a small celebration afterward, with food and gifts for the baby. "He looks just like Isaac," Dorothy Thomas commented, examining James's features. "Same blue eyes, same determined chin." "He has Tabitha's nose, though," Mrs. Morrison added, "and I suspect he will have her temperament, which is a good thing. Isaac was a wild child, always getting into trouble." "I was not wild," Isaac protested with a grin. "Just curious. You climbed onto the roof of the general store when you were 6 and could not get down," Mr. Morrison reminded him. "Your father had to get a ladder. I would call that wild." The friendly teasing continued, and Tabitha felt a rush of gratitude for this community that had welcomed her so completely. These people had become her friends, her family in a way that went beyond blood. As autumn progressed into winter, they settled into new rhythms as a family. Tabitha learned to nurse James while cooking dinner, to soothe his cries in the middle of the night without fully waking, to read the different sounds of his fussing to know whether he was hungry or tired or simply wanting attention. Isaac proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with James but also practical. He had no qualms about changing soiled diapers or walking the floor with a crying baby, sharing the work in a way that Tabitha knew was not common among men. "My father did the same," Isaac explained when she commented on it. "He said that raising a child was too important to leave entirely to one parent, that he wanted to know his son, and how could he do that if he did not participate in the daily work of caring for me?" On a snowy evening in late December, with James sleeping in his cradle near the fire and Christmas just days away, Tabitha found herself reflecting on the past year. It seemed impossible that only 15 months ago she had been in Boston, desperate and alone, with no idea what the future held. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked from his chair, where he was whittling a wooden toy for James. "I am thinking about how much has changed. How different my life is now compared to what I thought it would be." She looked at him, at their son sleeping peacefully at the warm home they had built together. "I am thinking about how happy I am." Isaac set aside his whittling and crossed to the sofa, sitting beside her and pulling her close. "I am happy too, happier than I ever imagined possible." He kissed her temple. "Do you ever regret it, leaving everything behind, taking such a huge risk?" "Not for a single moment," Tabitha said firmly. "Everything I went through, every hardship and fear was worth it to end up here with you, even fainting on my doorstep from hunger." He smiled, but there was still a trace of old guilt in his eyes. "Even that, because you caught me and you took care of me and you never let go." She reached up to cup his cheek. "I love you, Isaac Yates. I loved you before I met you from your letters, but now I love you in a way that is so deep and so complete that I cannot imagine existing without you." "I love you too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are my whole heart, Tabitha. You and James. Everything I do, everything I build, it is all for us, for our family." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire and listening to James's soft breathing. Outside, snow fell quietly, blanketing the world in white, but inside they were warm and safe and together. The years that followed were full of the normal rhythms of ranch life. Hard work and occasional hardship, but also deep satisfaction and joy. James grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's quick mind. When he was 3, he became a big brother to a baby sister they named Margaret after Tabitha's mother. Margaret was as different from James as could be. Where he was serious and thoughtful, she was all laughter and mischief. Isaac joked that she was payback for his own childhood antics, and Tabitha could not disagree as she watched their daughter climb everything in sight and charm her way out of trouble with a dimpled smile. The ranch prospered as well. Isaac expanded the herd as he had planned, and with Tabitha's help managing the finances and finding the best markets for their beef, they were able to build a larger barn and add 2 rooms to the house. They hired help during the busiest seasons, and eventually, Thomas, the young man who had helped that first summer, became a permanent hand, building his own small cabin on the property. When James was 6 and Margaret was 3, Tabitha found herself pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect, and in the spring, she delivered another son they named Robert. Robert was a sweet, easy baby who rarely cried and seemed content to observe the world with solemn, dark eyes. Life was not without challenges. There were hard winters that took their toll, a year when cattle prices dropped and money was tight, illnesses that scared them, and the constant worry that came with raising children in a harsh environment. But through it all, Tabitha and Isaac faced everything together, their partnership deepening with each passing year. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac surprised Tabitha with a trip to Denver. Mrs. Morrison agreed to watch the children, and for 3 days they stayed in a real hotel, ate in restaurants, and attended a theater performance. It was wonderful, but Tabitha found herself missing the children and the ranch, eager to get home. "I used to dream about living in a city," she told Isaac on the train ride back. "Having an easier life with modern conveniences and culture, but now I cannot imagine wanting to be anywhere but our ranch. It is home in a way nowhere else could ever be." "I feel the same way," Isaac agreed. "Though I confess the hot bath at the hotel was nice. Maybe we should look into getting one of those fancy tubs for the house." They did eventually install a proper bathtub, along with other improvements that made life easier without changing the essential character of their home. Isaac built a larger chicken coop when Tabitha's egg business expanded to supplying several stores in Silverton. She started a small orchard, dreaming of the day when their grandchildren would play among the apple and cherry trees. The children grew, each developing their own personalities and interests. James loved working with the cattle and announced at age 8 that he wanted to be a rancher like his father. Margaret showed an aptitude for numbers and helped Tabitha with the ranch accounts almost as soon as she could write. Robert proved to have a gift with horses, able to calm even the most skittish animal with patience and gentle hands. When James was 12, a younger couple moved onto the neighboring property that had stood empty for years. The Daniels family had 3 children of their own, and the two families quickly became close friends. Isaac helped Samuel Daniels learn ranching, and the children ran back and forth between the properties like they were one big family. As Tabitha watched her children play with the Daniels children one summer afternoon, she thought about the lonely girl who had stepped off that stage so many years ago. That girl had been brave but frightened, hopeful but uncertain, with nothing but a dream of a better life. Now she stood here with a husband she adored, 3 healthy children, a prosperous ranch, and a community that valued her. She had built a life beyond anything she had imagined possible, and every bit of it stemmed from that single terrifying decision to answer an advertisement from a stranger. "What are you smiling about?" Isaac asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Even after all these years, his touch still made her heart skip. "I am thinking about how grateful I am. For you, for our children, for this life we have built." She leaned back against him, comfortable and content. "I am thinking about how love can grow from the smallest seed into something that fills your entire world." "That is the most romantic thing you have ever said," Isaac teased gently. "And you say a lot of romantic things." "I am serious," she protested, turning in his arms to face him. "When I answered your advertisement, I was looking for security, for a future that did not involve starving in a Boston tenement. I was not looking for love. I did not even think that was possible with a stranger. But," he prompted, knowing there was more. "But I found it anyway. I found a love so deep and so real that it has colored every moment of the last 15 years. I found a partner who respects me and values my opinions, a father who adores his children, a man who makes me laugh and holds me when I cry and never once has made me regret taking that chance." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I found everything, Isaac. Everything I needed and so much I did not even know I wanted." Isaac kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss that spoke of years together and years still to come. "I found everything too," he said quietly. "The day you fainted on my doorstep was the luckiest day of my life. I caught you, and I have never let go, and I never will." "Promise," she whispered, though she already knew the answer. "Promise," he said firmly. "Until the day I die and beyond, if there is anything after. You are mine and I am yours, and that is never going to change." From the yard they heard Margaret call out, "Mama, Papa, come see what we found." And the moment of quiet intimacy was broken. But that was all right. This was their life. Moments of romance and connection interwoven with the everyday chaos of raising children and running a ranch. They walked hand in hand toward their daughter, toward their children and their future, together as they had been from the moment Isaac had caught Tabitha as she fell. He had caught her, and he had never let go, and together they had built something beautiful and lasting. As the sun set over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the Yates family gathered for dinner. The table Isaac had built was crowded now with 5 chairs, soon to need expanding as the children grew. The house was full of noise and laughter. the controlled chaos of a family that loved deeply and lived fully. Tabitha looked around the table at each face. Isaac at the head, strong and steady as ever, though there were now threads of silver in his dark hair. James, growing tall and serious, already showing signs of the man he would become. Margaret, all energy and mischief, talking a mile a minute about something she had read. Robert, quiet and observant, missing nothing despite his young age. This was her legacy, she thought. Not just the children themselves, but the family they were creating, the values they were instilling, the love that filled this house and would go on filling it for generations. This was what she and Isaac had built together from nothing but hope and determination. After dinner, after the children had been tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Tabitha and Isaac sat on the porch in the cool evening air. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by any city lights, and the sound of the creek bubbling over rocks provided a peaceful backdrop. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had not placed that advertisement?" Tabitha asked. "Sometimes," Isaac admitted. "I would probably still be here, still working the ranch, but alone. The house would be quiet and empty. I would have made a living but not a life." "What about you? Do you wonder what would have happened if you had not answered it?" "I try not to," Tabitha said honestly. "The alternatives were not pleasant to consider, but I do know that I would not have found happiness. Maybe I would have survived, but I would not have thrived. Not like this." She took his hand, their fingers intertwining automatically after years of practice. "You gave me a life worth living, Isaac. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," he corrected gently. "I was barely living before you came, just existing, going through the motions. You brought color and joy and meaning to everything. You made a house into a home and transformed me from a lonely rancher into a husband and father." He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "Thank you for taking that chance. Thank you for being brave enough to step off that stage and into an unknown future." "Thank you for catching me when I fell," Tabitha replied softly, "in every possible way." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead, secure in their love and in the life they had built. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, as every day did. But they would face it together, as they had faced everything since that September day when a desperate woman collapsed on a doorstep, and a lonely man caught her. He had caught her, and he had never let go, and their love had grown into something that would outlast them both, living on in their children and their children's children, a legacy of courage and commitment and the simple choice to take a chance on love. As they finally went inside for the night, Isaac paused at the door to look back at the land he loved, at the ranch he had built and the life he had created. Then he looked at Tabitha, and his heart swelled with gratitude and love so powerful it nearly hurt. "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too," she replied, "always and forever." And it was true. Always and forever, through seasons and years, through hardship and joy, their love endured. It had started with a letter and a leap of faith, had been cemented when he caught her as she fell, and had grown into something rare and precious. The story of Isaac and Tabitha Yates would be told for generations in Silverton. The mail-order bride who arrived with nothing and built everything, the rancher who saw past desperation to the woman beneath, and the love that grew between them that proved stronger than any challenge. It was a story of hope fulfilled, of chances taken, of two people who found in each other exactly what they needed most. And they lived happily, surrounded by family and love for all their days. The ranch prospered and grew, passed down eventually to James and then to his children. The orchard Tabitha planted grew tall and strong, producing fruit that fed 3 generations. The house was expanded and improved, but never lost the warmth that had been built into its foundation by two people who loved deeply and truly. In their later years, when their hair was gray and their children were grown with families of their own, Isaac and Tabitha would sit on that same porch and remember. They remembered the beginning, when everything was new and uncertain. They remembered the challenges they had overcome together. But most of all, they remembered the love that had sustained them through it all. "You have any regrets?" Isaac asked her one evening when they were both past 70 and marveling at having lived so long and so well. "Not a single one," Tabitha said firmly, her hand still finding his as naturally as breathing. "You, only that I did not place that advertisement sooner," Isaac replied with a smile. "Think of all the years we could have had together." "We have had enough years to fill several lifetimes," Tabitha countered, "and every one of them has been a gift." They passed peacefully, Isaac first and then Tabitha not long after, unable to imagine life without her partner of more than 50 years. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, and their children planted aspens around the graves, trees that would turn gold each autumn in a celebration of the love that had created their family. The story ended as all good stories do, with love triumphant and promises kept. Isaac had caught Tabitha when she fell, and he had never let go, and together they had created a legacy that would endure for generations. It was a story of courage and commitment, of two strangers who became soulmates, of a love that began with a letter and lasted a lifetime. And in Silverton, Colorado, where the mountains touch the sky and the winters are harsh, but the summers are beautiful, the story of the mail-order bride and the rancher who loved her is still told, a reminder that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards, and that love, when it is real and true, can overcome any obstacle and last forever.